I have another critical issue to talk with you all about today, about the growing anti-Israel voices growing on the conservative right in the United States. Please stick with me until the end, because this is super important to understand. First, I want to set the record straight. When Israel defends itself against Sunni jihadists like Hamas or ISIS and Shia jihadists like Iran and Hezbollah, we're not just fighting for our survival. This is really to help defend the whole freedom-loving world from this growing Islamic jihad, both Sunni and Shia. Israel is the tip of the spear, the frontline outpost of the freedom-loving world. And we're doing the job that protects America's soldiers, taxpayers, and future, whether the pundits and influencers and journalists want to admit it or not, or politicians. This isn't a theory. It's what Trump's America First foreign policy looks like when done right. Strong, sovereign allies for the U.S., like Israel, handling their own neighborhoods so America doesn't get dragged into endless wars in those areas like the Middle East. We can do it, not America. But today that truth is under attack from within the conservative Republican movement itself in America. Recently, I watched the Turning Point USA debate between comedian Dave Smith and journalist Josh Hammer, moderated by Charlie Kirk of Turning Point USA, and I was stunned. Dave Smith didn't just get basic facts wrong. He delivered Hamas-level propaganda with a libertarian language. Even worse, the crowd applauded him. And the YouTube comments on this Charlie Kirk video are a chilling sign of how far some conservatives have strayed from truth and moral clarity. This must be a red flag for leadership, and in the conservative movement, and especially for Charlie Kirk and the Turning Point. And it's not just Dave Smith. Tucker Carlson questions the U.S.-Israel alliance. Candece Owens recites anti-Israel blood libels and calls AIPAC a threat to American democracy. Vivek Ramaswamy echoes America First rhetoric while distancing from the only country in the Middle East that actually shares American values, which is the Jewish state of Israel. These voices aren't exposing truth. They're confusing patriotism with poison. And in doing so, they're weakening the moral backbone of the conservative movement in America. So let's break it down. Dave Smith, along with others like Tucker Carlson and even Steve Bannon, have claimed that Israel dragged America into an illegal war of aggression against Iran, recklessly endangering United States soldiers in a conflict that they say serves no American interest. So first of all, let's unpack what that accusation really means. They are in a sense implying that President Trump, the most defiant, independent-minded U.S. president in modern history, was just a puppet in the hands of Israel. That Trump, along with his national security team, had no agency, no judgment, and no ability to defend American interests without being manipulated by Israel. That's what they're saying in saying that, oh, Israel runs America. That's not just insulting to Trump, it's absurd. But now let's jump into the actual issue itself. When Israel dismantled Syrian air defenses and Iranian bases in Damascus, it didn't ask for a single U.S. Marine to help. When Israel sent elite intelligence operatives into Iranian sites and even nuclear camps, it didn't ask for U.S. commandos to help. When Israel took out senior Hezbollah commanders and intercepted Iranian shipments to Gaza, Israel did not ask for any assistance from America for American troops. We did it all alone. We didn't ask anything. And when Trump greenlit operations against Iranian nuclear targets, it wasn't because Israel dragged him into war. That was Trump policy. Trump himself has been warning since back in 2015, before he even ran for president, that Iran must never be allowed nuclear weapons. That was his Trump doctrine in 2015, and Israel obviously supported it, not the other way around. In fact, Israel led the charge against Iran. We sent in our pilots. We put boots on the ground in Iran. We put in decades of intelligence work. Only after Israel did the heavy lifting, including cleaning out the Iranian skies, was then the U.S. able to send in their B-2 bombers and strike the Iranian nuclear sites from the sky without risking the lives of U.S. pilots or any U.S. soldiers on the ground. We did all the prep work so that they could do that risk-free. That's not entanglement. That's strategic delegation. That's smart foreign policy and incredible teamwork between Israel, America's most reliable ally in the world, in the Middle East. Now let's tackle the next big lie. What do they say? The U.S. gives Israel billions of dollars in aid, and Dave Smith adds, to commit war crimes. That's absolute nonsense. First, let's deal with the biggest libel. War crimes? Dave Smith is obviously referring to the last 2 years of war against Iranian and Qatari-funded Hamas terrorists in Gaza. Dave's claim is morally twisted and factually dishonest. First of all, regarding the war in Gaza, Israel makes unprecedented efforts to minimize civilian harm, dropping leaflets, sending text messages, making phone calls, and even using the knock-on-the-roof technique to warn the civilians in Gaza to leave before we strike. No other military in history has operated with such restraint while facing enemies embedded in dense civilian areas. Meanwhile, Hamas deliberately fires rockets from homes, schools, hospitals, and mosques, and churches using their own mothers, grandmothers, and children as human shields by design. So when their non-combatant civilians tragically die, it's not because Israel targeted them. It's because Hamas set the stage for it as human shields, hoping to win the PR war and get people like Dave Smith to parrot their lies and demonize Israel. That's not murder. That's self-defense under impossible moral conditions Hamas created. The ones responsible for what Israel is doing in Gaza are Hamas and the states that empowered and funded it, Iran, Qatar, and Egypt, that helped smuggle all the weapons to them. Israel is not the aggressor here. We're the deterrent. We're making sure that this Islamic barbarism never happens again. Smith's additional critique regarding Gaza is that Israel should use special forces instead of bombing in order to not kill as many innocent civilians. Well, that sounds great in a podcast studio in one of his debates, but this isn't the Call of Duty game on a computer or on an iPhone. This is real war. Israel does use special forces extensively, including my own sons and their friends who have had to fight house to house, door to door, tunnel to tunnel, endangering their lives. But you cannot dismantle an underground terror infrastructure the size of Manhattan with infantry soldiers. Hamas has hundreds of miles of underground tunnels, thousands, tens of thousands of fighters, and tens of thousands of rockets that they had, all deliberately hidden under schools, hospitals, mosques, and homes. We also use airstrikes because they are more surgical, not less. Airstrikes eliminate targets with minimal Israeli casualties and often fewer Gaza casualties than a prolonged ground invasion would cause. If Smith really cared about wanting to avoid bombing altogether, well, he would be calling about Hamas to release our hostages in Gaza and surrender. That's how you end the war. Now let's touch upon Dave's claim regarding foreign aid. This is serious. Everyone should know this. U.S. aid to Israel is not charity. It's a security investment. Israel is the most battle-tested, cost-effective military ally America has ever had. As opposed to other U.S. foreign aid recipients like Egypt or Jordan who give America nothing, Israel provides America with valuable intelligence, military technology, and day-to-day battle-tested military technology updates for the American Armed Forces and Air Force. Former Secretary of State Alexander Haig said it best, and I quote, "Israel is the largest, most battle-tested, and cost-effective U.S. aircraft carrier in the world, and it doesn't require a single American soldier to be deployed on the ground." End quote. That's the truth. Foreign aid to America is an investment for America. But let me say something bold, and I've said it for years. Let's end the United States foreign aid to Israel. Not out of punishment, but out of pride. Here in Israel, we don't need that cash anymore from America. We need respect. Instead of that foreign aid, let's build joint U.S.-Israel trade agreements, joint research and development partnerships, and defense collaborations that aren't weaponized by D.C. politicians or used to leash our sovereignty of action. To those who truly understand U.S. foreign policy aid, it's not a gift to any country. It's a leash. It's a golden prison. United States governments use foreign aid. It's one of Washington's favorite tools to control the behavior of the recipient countries, including its allies, like Israel. And in Israel's case, that aid has been used for decades to pressure us, constrain us, and often undermine our national security. Because if you don't do what we're saying, we're not going to give you this aid. That's the way it's used. Let me walk you through it, since Dave Smith clearly never bothered to do the homework on American foreign aid. When the U.S. gives Israel military aid, first of all, most of it is earmarked to be spent on American defense contractors. It's all money that goes back to America. So it comes with unspoken but very real strings attached. One, don't build in your eternal capital, Jerusalem. How many times have we heard that over the past few decades? Two, don't respond too forcefully to rocket attacks from Gaza. We heard that from the Biden administration during the war. Hold off on operations in Lebanon. We're in talks with the Lebanese government, right? Because they give us aid, we have to listen to what they're telling us to do. Here's another one. Accept another doomed ceasefire with Hamas. It'll help our diplomatic optics because they own us, because they give us aid. That's not partnership. That's not partnership. That is coercion. And when Israel pushes back, like when Prime Minister Netanyahu stood up in the U.S. Congress to warn about Obama's JCPOA Iran nuclear deal, what happens? The Obama administration punishes Israel diplomatically and weaponizes aid as a threat, right? They punish us in the United Nations with anti-Israel votes. You think that's support? That's manipulation. That's the deep state of the United States using taxpayer dollars to micromanage Israeli policy from foggy bottom. And here's the kicker. When the aid stops, please God, people like Dave Smith lose their favorite talking point, and Israel gains moral clarity and strategic freedom. They won't even talk about us as a charity case, but it's unequal to America. Another poisonous lie being spread by the podcast right. Israel controls U.S. foreign policy. This is anti-Semitic conspiracy nonsense dressed up as foreign policy realism. What am I talking about? Israel doesn't run U.S. foreign policy. If anything, U.S. administrations, Democrat and Republican alike, have spent decades pressuring Israel, not taking orders from Israel. Like, how absurd is that? Let's go back. Bush Sr. withheld aid guarantees from Jewish homes being built in Judea and Samaria in the beginning of the 1990s. Then we come to Clinton, who shoved the horrible Oslo Accords down Israel's throat, bringing arch-terrorist Yasser Arafat and terror back to our doorstep and giving them our land in Judea and Samaria and Gaza. Then we have Obama empowering Iran with a nuclear deal and abstained at the UN while anti-Israel resolutions passed, and he pushed for his own anti-Israel resolution under other countries. Then we have Biden pushing Israel to implement the two-state solution even after Hamas massacred 1,200 more Israeli citizens on October 7th. The idea that Israel, and Netanyahu specifically, has been running United States foreign policy for decades is such a horrible lie, laughably false, and historically ignorant. Yet the Dave Smiths of this world and his ilk are all pushing that. In fact, Netanyahu has spent his entire political career resisting U.S. foreign policy, not running it. Few remember, but when Bibi Netanyahu first entered politics in Israel in the early 1990s, he ran on a platform against the creation of a Palestinian state. It was the year 1995, and the Clinton administration was all in on the Oslo Accords that forced us to create a Palestinian state, pushing Israel to surrender land and security for a fantasy called peace. When Netanyahu became prime minister, he didn't suddenly embrace that vision of a Palestinian state. He had to navigate it. He couldn't crush it. Why? Because Presidents Clinton, Bush, Obama, and Biden all pushed some version of the two-state solution. And Netanyahu's policy became clear. Pacify these U.S. administrations without letting Israel be destroyed with the creation of a Palestinian state. Say just enough to keep the pressure at bay while doing everything possible to ensure that a terror state called Palestine is never born in the heart of our homeland. That is not someone running U.S. foreign policy. That's someone doing damage control while protecting Israel's red lines. Netanyahu is the one leader of Israel who consistently said no to a Palestinian state in action, while the Israeli left continuously bowed to U.S. pressure and gave us Oslo, gave us the Gaza disengagement. It was their policy forced upon Sharon. And endless terror, Netanyahu stood up and said, enough. He defied Obama on the Iran deal. He stood in the U.S. Congress and said what every Western leader should have said. Iran must never get a nuclear bomb. Jerusalem is Israel's, the Jewish people's eternal, undivided capital forever. Hamas is not a partner for peace. It is a genocidal terror organization. That's not Netanyahu manipulating American foreign policy. That's moral clarity he was standing up and saying when no one else was willing to listen, especially not American administrations. And let's not forget, Obama, Biden, and the entire U.S. foreign policy establishment hated Netanyahu for it. He wasn't pulling the strings of America. He was standing alone defending Israel's truth in a room full of appeasers. The voices of Dave Smith, Tucker Carlson, and Candece Owens, who are talking about Israel owning American foreign policy, and they who once fought against tyranny are now parroting talking points that sound like they came from Qatar, Al Jazeera, or the Muslim Brotherhood. They say they're America first, but they're targeting Israel, the Jewish state of Israel, the very country that shares and defends America's values, the only state like that in the Middle East. And while they rant endlessly about AIPAC, they say nothing about Qatar, a regime that spends hundreds of billions of dollars buying off Washington, D.C., funding politicians on both sides of the aisle, hiring top PR and lobbying firms in D.C., bankrolling anti-Israel propaganda, and even hosting Hamas terrorists in five-star hotels in Doha, as well as investing in conservative media outlets. That's not influence, that's infiltration by Qatar. These politicians and pundits also ignore CARE, a Muslim Brotherhood front operating in the U.S., suing schools and pushing lawfare to silence critics of Islamic extremism in America. These pundits also ignore China, Iran, and other actual enemies of the United States, regimes that are actively undermining American sovereignty, corrupting U.S. politics, infiltrating U.S. institutions, and poisoning U.S. media and culture from within. China is pouring billions of dollars into American universities as well. Tech companies, Hollywood, TikTok, and Wall Street shaping the narrative, silencing criticism, and exporting communist censorship disguised as diversity, equity, and freedom of speech. Meanwhile, they're buying farmland near military bases across the United States and stealing American intellectual property on an industrial scale. Iran, through its proxies, like CARE, NIAC, and Muslim Brotherhood-linked groups, is waging an ideological war inside America as well, using media, lawfare, and political lobbying to normalize anti-Israel hatred, fuel anti-Semitism, and erode America's moral clarity. They fund academic research, seed sympathetic voices in Congress, also buy out think tanks in D.C., push narratives straight out of Tehran through sympathetic Western journalists and think tanks in D.C. But instead of exposing China's totalitarian grip on or Iran's jihadist networks, people like Dave Smith, Tucker Carlson, and Candece Owens fixate on Israel, the one democracy in the Middle East that actually strengthens American values, fights America's enemies, and asks for nothing but mutual respect and the ability to survive and beat our enemies so they can't beat us. Instead, they choose to demonize the one democracy in the Middle East and the one Jewish state in the world. Why do you think? Well, that's a question every conservative needs to ask themselves. Here's what real America First foreign policy should look like vis-a-vis Israel, based on a true understanding of President Trump's actions himself. End foreign aid, but strengthen the alliance. Let Israel be sovereign and self-funded and just have partnership arrangements with America. Replace the leash with strategic cooperation between our two countries. Expose the real foreign influence networks in America, like Qatar, CARE, Iran, and China, not the mythical Israeli lobby of AIPAC, which is tiny compared to the other foreign lobbies doing work in D.C. Stand with freedom, not with jihad. If you believe in Western civilization, you must stand firm with Israel, period. Israel doesn't need pity or permission to do what we do. We are a sovereign Jewish state in our ancestral homeland, defending ourselves and the whole freedom-loving world against the growing Sunni and Shia jihadi terrorists out to destroy the whole freedom-loving world. But if the conservative movement loses its moral compass, if it turns on the very ally that has stood by America for decades, it's not Israel that will fall, it's America. Because this is not just about the Jewish state of Israel. This is about the truth. Standing and supporting Israel is about the truth. Another huge lie that Dave Smith likes to spew, that Gaza was a concentration camp. This is not just wrong. It's a slander and a blood libel, and a slander against truth. Before October 7th, Gaza had thriving shopping malls and resorts. The Capitol Mall in Gaza City offered multi-story retail international brands, a food court with burgers, pizza and ice cream, escalators, and all where Gazans boasted it was similar to the malls in other countries around the world. Gaza even hosted its first 5-star hotel, the El Mashtal, complete with a pool, piano bar, and ocean view suites. From upscale restaurants like the Roots Club to equestrian parks, seaside resorts like Blue Beach, and beachside cafes, Gaza's middle class enjoyed real leisure and sophistication. Hamas transformed Gaza into terror nests, burying rockets and tunnels beneath cafes, hotels, and residential buildings. The terrorists weaponized their own civilians, not Israel, all while they had paradise on top. Labeling Gaza a concentration camp erases reality. It treats the victims as enemy property and turns a blind eye to the fact that Hamas chose luxury over human life and corrupting their society as they were exporting terror to murder and massacre Jews. The truth is clear. Gaza was never a concentration camp. It was once a society that had normalcy and luxury until Hamas decided to invade Israel, murder 1,200 plus Israelis, take 250 plus hostages, leaving Israel no choice but to go into the Gaza Strip and destroy it. That's not a tragic humanitarian situation. That's terrorism masquerading as civilization, blaming Israel for bringing about their own self-destruction. If you want to see what Gaza looked like before October 7th, just follow one of these first-hand accounts on social media. So Dave Smith's concentration camp claim isn't just false. It's a horrible blood libel. He's helping Hamas hide behind innocent civilians. He's covering for Hamas. We must call it out. We must call it what it is. Terror disguised as tragedy, given cover and defense by Dave Smith's and other conservative pundits today. One can either believe the libelous lies being spewed daily by Dave Smith and the others, or stick with the truth. It's about whether Western civilization still believes in right and wrong, good from evil, truth teller from grifter. Israel will survive. We always have. But will America survive this? That depends on whether Americans are willing to wake up to the lies and choose courage, clarity, and real partnership with the most reliable ally that America has in the whole world, the Jewish state of Israel. As Tucker Carlson himself quoted, yes, misunderstands, in his interview with Ted Cruz, God told Abraham, those who bless Israel will be blessed, and those who curse Israel will be cursed. And yes, the modern state of Israel, the third Jewish commonwealth, is the manifestation of the Jewish people who speak the same language, do the same religious rituals, and live in the same homeland as our biblical ancestors did more than 3,000 years ago. We are the only nation in the world who can claim that. People can criticize Israeli government policy all they want, as they should be criticizing U.S. policy or any government's policy all they want. But choosing to legitimize the voices of the enemies of Israel over our rights to live and defend ourselves against the jihadi evil we're up against is choosing to curse Israel and be cursed. Tucker Carlson, Candece Owens, Dave Smith, all these others, they've chosen to curse Israel, and they will be cursed. All of you, please share this information with people, friends, family who might be listening to some of those pundits so that they can know the truth and they can be given the facts to be able to bless Israel and the Jewish people to be blessed. Am Yisrael Chai. If you are not yet a subscriber to our daily, belief-based, inspiring, politically incorrect, truthful videos about Israel, the Jewish people, and the freedom-loving world, what are you waiting for? Go to pulseofisrael.com and click to subscribe today. And yes, we are a donor-based operation. We need your donations for support in order to make these videos and get our videos seen and do all the work we do. So every once in a while, whether a large donation or a small donation, just go to pulseofisrael.com and click on the donate button. Shalom, everyone, and thanks for watching.
Pulse of Israel, frontline videos from the Holy Land. Support our work by donating today.